Another episode of Coffee with Moshe. It's been several years, I believe. We stopped doing it. We're back. And today we're going to continue. And today I have a special guest here in Ma'ale Adumim. In my home, we have my student, friend, colleague, and Krav Maga long-term inspiration practitioner, Hal Bluestein, who lives mostly in Philadelphia and comes to Israel on a regular basis to visit and to train, to contribute. So it's a great pleasure and honor always to see you, Hal. It truly is. So Hal's a great guy, and he's devoted his life to helping the Jewish people and to being a community member in general. And he trained with Imi Lichtenfeld back in the day when he first came to the U.S. So who is Imi Lichtenfeld? Krav Maga developed over many years in Israel, and we have here a book which written by researcher Noach Gross, which discusses the development of Krav Maga. It basically began in 1880, around that time, when Jews began returning to Israel in greater numbers, were being beaten up. So the moment when an Arab hit a Jew, and the first Jew blocked in some sort of way, that moment was the moment that Krav Maga was developed. And since then, many people joined in the project and contributed, and it went through various names, Haganah, Kapap, Defense, and so forth, and it developed. But in the 1940s, Imi Lichtenfeld immigrates from Slovakia, from Hungary. The borders change all the time. And he became a key factor. And he was the one basically who brought it to the civilian world. Because until then it was simply the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and it wasn't really taught outside. It certainly wasn't taught outside of Israel. So tell us a little bit about when you first met him.
So in Philadelphia, there was an instructor who was a black belt in I think it was Chinese Kempo, and he, amongst other 9 people, were brought by Emi to Israel and trained at the Wingate Institute for a year of intensive training to study under him and then be able to bring Krav Maga to the Jews of America. That was the intent. So he was one of 10 people. So the instructor that I worked under was Alan Feldman from Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And he was one of those 10, and he learned and came in. And then once he started developing and started teaching, Imi Lichtenfeld came to visit to the States and went to visit all of his teachers that he had trained here.
Those 10 guys.
Yeah, so he went around and visited and trained with anybody that they were training with. Mm-hmm. So he trained with them, and he was leading a couple of the classes in Philadelphia. So I got to learn directly with him. What I found interesting when I came here and met you for the first time and was watching your class, you had a class of maybe 20, 25 people at the time, and I just didn't know what to expect. I heard of you through a friend of a friend from LA, and I said, hey, I'll stop in and watch a class, maybe I'll participate. And I watched what you were doing, and what you were doing was, it just brought back great memories of, that's what I remember the style under Alan Feldman, the teacher who had learned directly under Emi, and how he was doing things. It was very fluid and natural, trying to be, here's your natural movements, not forced, because it would be easier to learn and easier to actually use. So it just, it was just kind of natural that we became friends, because you weren't overselling and just doing things for profit. You were trying to teach the right way.
Thank you.
And I thought that was noble, and I appreciated that.
So you saw a similarity.
Yes.
Even though I never had the privilege of meeting him or training with him, but that's very interesting to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about his approach? Did he reprimand students? Did he yell at students? Was he a badass, hitting people, or you're no good? Give me 20 push-ups.
He came off as a nice Saba. He was just like a nice grandfather. He came in, he was very fluid for a man of his age. He must have been in his 70s already. He was still very fluid, very calm, confident. It was this calm confidence that he was not worried about anything, wasn't afraid of anything, and he just showed you, here's how you do it. And when it wasn't right, he'd say, okay, let's work on this, do it a little different, see how I'm doing it this way. He would demonstrate it with the other instructor, Alan Feldman, that he had trained. and then he would just go back. All right, follow me at the front, stand behind me, and watch how I do it. And he would stand with us, so we would be the same direction, not facing. And we would that was the only thing that was unique. He didn't face the group. He would do it
with the same
facing the wall the same way. He just followed my movements and do what I do. And that was how he was very. It wasn't intimidating, even though we all knew who he was, and he was famous at the time because they brought it. He was the first guy that I'm aware of that brought it to the States. And I don't know how somehow he was funded that he was able to bring 10 American Jewish karate black belts of different styles
to Israel.
Yeah, and he brought they were different styles. That was the interesting thing. He didn't just say one. There were some were Taekwondo, Shotokan, Chinese Kempo was my guy, was in Philly, I believe.
Wow.
So they took different styles, found Jewish black belts around the country, and said, I'm going to teach you the Israeli style. Come to Israel for a year at the Wingate Institute, and that's what they did.
That's amazing. So you're saying these 10 black belts all came from very different styles, and yet Imi was able to incorporate the Krav Maga concepts within their styles.
Right, and I think that's why when you see in America now there are so many different Krav Maga studios with slightly different changes, and they've all modified them, and because a lot of them were doing different styles. So, and you combine things and they just find, all right, you know what, I like this better. Some styles are better fit certain body types, and people get more comfortable with things, and they're already doing it one way, so they probably just incorporated some of what he taught. So that's why in America it's not really a pure style, like this is the only way to do this,
right? Because
it was how Emi had developed it and brought it to America with his students and those teachers, but then it's developed over time. So that's why you find differences, I think.
That's very nice. To me, it sounds a lot like what Bruce Lee said. You know, adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, cultivate what is truly your own. So that's something which I do myself when teaching. Is I'll say, you know, this guy could be short and stocky, this guy could be tall and thin. A small female, a large male. You can't always expect everyone to do, you know, exactly the same kata, the same move. But you have to adapt it to your body. And as we get older, a lot of us have injuries, and you can't always do it the exact same way. You have to adapt it to your own body, to your own peculiar challenges that you face. So I think that's a very interesting idea. Have you ever found like use for Krav Maga over the years?
I actually used it one time in New York, and there were some of us, a group of Jews that were attacked by a much larger group of Arabs, and they were doing a protest, and they had signs on sticks, and they started swinging the sticks at us, and that was one they actually tried to hit me and the rabbi next to me, and I was able to use one of the blocks, you know, like you're leaning into it and blocking, and it, you know, it saved some serious injury. I felt like I broke my arm, but it didn't, and because to do it right, it just, and that was it worked because then they realized that they weren't winning the fight even with using sticks, so they stopped. Yeah, it wasn't just me; it was a bunch of our guys, and
took away their edge, took away their confidence.
They were just shocked by. They thought we would get hurt, and run away, and we didn't. So
that's amazing.
It was just a one time.
Yeah.
Thank God it was only once, but.
Thank you for sharing those stories with us. And continue training, and we have our training here ongoing in Israel. And this is an inspiration. At any age, wherever we are, we adapt it to our own needs. We survive. And it's like you put up a fight, and the opponent, even if you didn't defeat him, you took away his gusto, his motivation. He says, he's looking for an easy victim. You're not an easy victim. You know what? Move on.
That's what they did. They stopped. They stopped fighting.
That's amazing.
The whole group stopped. And they were outnumbered us like 5 or 6 to 1, and they stopped fighting.
5 or 6 to 1.
And all of us were fighting, and they stopped. They just stopped the fight.
That reminds me of the recent pogrom in Amsterdam a few months ago when the Israeli soccer fans were attacked, and there was also 5, 6, 7 against 1. And sometimes we face in these kind of situations, and we have no choice but to deal with it. Well, thank you for being here, Hal. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to more training.
Great.